I'm in my sneaker and backpack era.
Oh,
and it's like so good on your back, but then it's really inconvenient because you have to turn it around every time. No, it was annoying. And then I'm like, well, I don't know. I have a backpack now. Who knows what's in there?
You know, in 1986, my suitcase got lost. And so I like to bring a pair of trousers, an extra shirt to Expo. Like if I'm checking my bag.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be stuck at Expo West with one outfit.
If I take my backpack person thing to the next level, that's what I would. It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay.
Like a Jan sport.
All right, should we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up.
Is that enough for today?
This is The Naturalist. In every episode, we're covering the products, ideas, and trends that are shaping the CPG industry.
Or that we just really like.
So I did just spill a giant glass of water on my shirt, if anyone's wondering.
Which means you're drinking water, which I think is really important.
Should we talk about hydration?
Hydration, because I was like having this vision that they were like, it was going to mess up all my blood tests because I like haven't drank any water. So I'm like, I'd probably just be like, you know, paranoid, but I didn't want like goopy blood. Like I pictured like them taking my blood and it just be like dehydrated blood. Yeah, it's just like in there. It came out fine.
Gelatin.
But then afterwards, I like write my nurse. I'm like, surely she'll be like, no, it's like, you know, a cumulative effect over. And she was like, oh no, that could definitely affect, you know, your blood test. So we may have to like do other ones because I'm not staying hydrated. But isn't that just such a profound thing that like literally like a blood test, a routine blood test the results could be different just because of a couple of days of not drinking enough water. So the Water Llama's coming back. Baby.
I was just watching an episode of Only Murders in the Building, and there's this Hollywood producer that's Molly Shannon, and she's hilarious, and she's, you know, taking everything to the max in her role, and she has this water bottle. She carries around, and it was killing me yesterday.
She has a really big one on Running Point, too. Do you remember that when Kate Hudson has her? So really oversized water bottles.
So hydration is in.
Hydration is in. One of the things that we've been talking about a ton in recent episodes is functional beverages, and a lot of that is hydration and electrolytes. But I want to pick back up on the functional beverage conversation a little bit, because I don't know if you attended our H&N industry update thing.
Oh, no, I wasn't able to attend.
So we do these like industry updates where we kind of talk to our whole company about what's happening in the industry. A lot of the things we talk about on The Naturalist. And I'm like, rate and subscribe. I tell our whole company, rate and subscribe to The Naturalist. But we were talking about trends from Expo. Of course, functional beverages came up. And it kind of got like a little bit contentious in the chat because people from our supply side team were like, yeah, like we, you know, but we've been talking about an issue in functional beverages for years now, which is that so many of these products do not have efficacious dosages of the ingredients. And we brought that up on the podcast. Our comments on the podcast talked about this, but it just keeps coming up. And so I think this is a really interesting example of a category that's really trendy right now, but we have to definitely take a more critical eye to it and say, what is it that these products need to do to make sure they're working?
Well, and certainly this is something that hasn't just been a conversation within the Informa Health and Nutrition division that we're part of, but, you know, in broader society, Poppi just settled that lawsuit, I think, for $9 million.
Yeah.
About the gut health claims on its labels.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that like mainstream awareness too will hopefully lead to more companies really like asking those questions of their products before they go to market with them rather than after. We also got into the discussion of whether functional beverages can be labeled as dietary supplements. And there's some really important nuance there, even around the size of the product. So like a product like a shot, like some sort of energy shot, can often be, if it has the right dosages of the ingredients, labeled as a supplement, whereas many times a full-size beverage should not technically be labeled in that way, and it's not really compliant if it is. So there's a lot to break down there, and I just thought, wow, what interesting timing. We also heard, we had a discussion group with some of our investors through our Nutrition Capital Network brand. And I think one of the things that came up in that Bill had repeated, and everyone's kind of talking about, was they were saying functional soda is the new alt meat, or it's going to be the next alt meat. So do what you
will with that.
Yeah.
Well, what I think is interesting too, because we obviously talk about that efficacious dose part of it a lot. But when we have the Nexty Awards open and we ask brands that nominate to the functional food and beverage category to share that information with us, a lot of times they have that information. They can tell us, oh yes, it's this dose of ashwagandha or this dose of lion's mane and this is whatever and this is the research. I said, well, why isn't this on the can? Oh, because consumers don't care about that, or consumers don't understand all that. Or so that always is kind of the other side of that coin. Is there are brands that are making those claims that actually have the data and the research to back it up, but they're not sharing that with consumers because they think that's just, above and beyond what consumers care about, or that's too confusing or whatever. So I think that's really interesting too. And I think, it's time our industry kind of in general give a little bit more credit to consumers.
Yes.
On that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Get more information rather than just assume they don't care about it.
Yeah. And that is really interesting because I think in a case like that, the company wouldn't have to put that information on a label if they have a nutrition facts panel rather than a supplement facts panel. With supplements, you're always going to see the amount of the ingredient in there. And because many of these products are nutrition food products as opposed to supplement products. So it's really interesting to see the requirements versus, when I have seen some of those food and beverage products choosing to put the dosage on there. So yeah, I think you're right, though, that consumers do want that, and increasingly so. And I think in this functional beverage space, we'll start to see more of that demand.
And actually, just for a little more content, if people are interested in kind of digging deeper into this, Doug Brown on our team has a new shelf life column coming out tomorrow that's talking more. I mean, he's talked about this a lot too, about functional beverages and that blurred line between supplement and food. So
okay, so what else is happening? We have a few different things we wanted to chat about today. We have our Nutrition Capital Network event coming up at the end of April. I'm really excited about that. We'll have some great content there. And one of the big themes of that event is going to be about the future of innovation. It's held in New York, which is always a lot of fun to visit New York. But, we're going to see a lot of great investors there having conversations about what they're looking for when they're looking to invest in companies. And then we have 10 presenting companies, many of which will be in the supplement and functional beverage space. So I'm really looking forward to that. But this topic, I've been thinking about it a lot, this idea of the future of innovation and what gives a trend staying power. Of course, we had our fad or future episode a while ago where we just kind of like, is it a fad or is it the future? But when we really think about that, I mean, what are your thoughts on what makes a trend something that truly is going to influence consumer health?
Oh, that's a huge question. I mean, I think it has to, this is probably going to be really obvious, but it has to be a mutual effort on behalf of consumers, something that consumers are demanding, and then something that brands are introducing.
Yeah.
That seems really obvious, right? But a lot of times, crickets, remember when crickets were going to be the next huge sustainability trend? I think that was more a question of companies trying to introduce crickets as a protein source, a sustainable protein source, but it wasn't reflecting a consumer demand for that kind of a product. So I feel like, yes, brands can inspire and innovate and create demand for something, but I think it has to reflect at least a growing interest or a growing demand that consumers have.
No, I love that. And there has to be the receptivity to it, even if it is something that consumers aren't familiar with. Like, I think an example of something that was kind of driven by industry, but consumers have been receptive to it, at least over time, are the waterless products.
Yes, I was just thinking the paperboard packaging.
Yeah, and seeing that, like, I told you I just started using that bar conditioner, like the stick conditioner.
I used it this weekend. It's insane.
Yeah, your hair looks beautiful.
It's amazing.
I love it. And you realize how easy that actually is. Yeah. So I think there are some things that companies can, or consumers can overcome and be willing to try, and then some that they're not. But I think the protein example is really interesting, the crickets, because protein remains a huge trend, or has kind of come back. It's having another
maybe
moment.
Crickets will come back.
Maybe crickets will, but then I also just saw something that's like a syrup for gyms that you can so after you work out, it's like a syrup that you would then put in, a coffee. So things like that are trendier, but I think if they align with how consumers are behaving, to your point, and address a real consumer need. And I think trends that have staying power have to be able to evolve. So you look at some of these things, like some things just are a flash in the pan and then they kind of die, right? Like there's no next step for them. There's no broader consumer base for them to reach. So things that can continue to evolve in the format, in the flavor, in the ability to reach consumers that maybe wouldn't have tried it 5 years ago. And some of the things that we're tracking really show that, you know, you may have this kernel of a trend, but over time you start to see it develop in new ways that address consumer needs.
I think a great example of that is what we've been seeing with alternative sweeteners and sugar, because it kind of went full on into alternative sweeteners, things like stevia or erythritol or allulose, you know, those kept evolving and changing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, cane sugar started making a comeback. And now we're seeing, you know, we've seen all these natural sugars, date sugars, agave, coconut sugar, really, and then cane sugar coming back, but better quality. And then I think the next evolution of that we've just seen a lot of at Expo West is these kind of combos, you know, where you see cane sugar, but then a little bit of stevia or a little bit of, you know, so different flavors coming together so that people are still using cane sugar, but they can use less of it and still attain the desired sweetness without the aftertaste.
I think that's such a great example of that. And when so many consumers are saying like, gosh, stevia just doesn't do it for me. And then manufacturers are thinking, well, we could still scale back on the white sugar processed sweetener in here and kind of introduce other things. Great example. And I think with the healthy beverage thing, so, you know, it was funny when the investors were saying, and investors said this, but I think healthy beverages, I think that's absolutely here to stay. I mean, the beverage market is huge, and I just think we're going to continue to see more and more consumers choosing cleaner, healthier options. But what those look like, that is the part of the trend that will evolve.
Well, and again, with the sugar thing, I mean, a couple of years ago, all the functional healthy beverages were using these alt sugars.
Yeah.
And this year at Expo West, I saw more unsweetened beverages than I ever have before.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's kind of an interesting way that's moving as well.
It is. Yeah. Well, and on the sweetener front, we had a good article that I was reading this morning on date sugar. Secret Shopper. So what is Secret Shopper first?
Okay, so Secret Shopper is a column in Natural Foods Merchandiser magazine, which goes out to our retail audience. And I think it's a really fun column. I love it. We've been doing it for years and years and years. And basically, our Secret Shopper goes into a retailer and asks a question. So they get the staff to help them. And this time the question was, I think it was, you know, is date sugar better for me than cane sugar? And so the article contains the answers of that staff member. What did they say? How did they respond? And then we bring in an expert. So a nutritionist or a product developer, just an expert in that field, to talk about what was the answer correct? How did that person do? And give a little bit more expert information on the topic.
I love the column too. I find myself like doing that every time I go to a grocery store. Can you tell me the difference between is plant-based collagen a real thing?
And you know what's fun too is that I've had retailers tell me over the years that a lot of them will tear that section out and stick it in their staff room and use it for training.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool because you're right. There's a lot of those questions that I don't know, you know. Is collagen a complete protein, or do I need, what was the one, the xylitol in my toothpaste?
Yeah.
Whatever.
And normally they're pretty good.
Yeah.
These retailers that we go to, I feel like this one pretty much nailed it, right?
Yeah. So the Secret Shopper was asking about date sugar and whether it's more nutritious. And so basically the answer is yes.
And it's still sugar.
Yeah. So it does have a little bit more fiber. It does have some polyphenols. It has some vitamins, minerals, electrolytes, but probably not in any amount that's going to...
And less processed. And I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of these sweeteners, especially the fruit-based and the plant-based, but the fruits. Like, and we've seen some products, we talked in last week's episode about a few of the products that are using just like the whole fruit. Yeah. And not even not even extracting the sugar. And it's amazing how much sweetness you can get from that alone. But I think no matter what, coming back to this idea, it's still sugar, even if it's natural or from a whole food. So
but it sure makes us feel better about ourselves.
It really does. It really does. Yeah, we have been doing like a suite of we have more than that, but our special treat of the week. And that's just like basically like whatever. And then everything else is like, oh, well, that's sweetened with like, apple juice. It's fine.
What was your special treat of the week this week?
We went to Moxie with my parents and we got their chocolate chip cookies and they were so good.
That's good.
And then, so I've had a few, but, you know what I really love? I don't know if you've been, so this is a Costco find, one of my favorite Costco finds, the skinny dipped peanut butter cups.
Oh, yeah.
So that's something that I don't count as sweet. There's a lot of things that don't count as
They're at Expo.
And then I recently got, but this is just breakfast, but those like oats, they're always at Expo, the like little overnight oats.
Oh, the mush?
Yeah. Do you eat that?
I don't because I don't like sweetened oatmeal.
So you're saying that's a sweet of the week is what you're telling me. That should count as my sweet of the week.
No, I wouldn't call that a sweet.
It's very sweet though, but it's only fruit.
It's fruit, yeah.
Yeah. So, no, but normally it's like stuff from the salty donut, which is so good, or Bakery 4, like stuff like that, where it's just like, I'm not going to be like, does it have date sugar in it? I just don't care.
I'm so disappointed in you. Bring it on.
Bring it on. Yeah. So I think as we look at like this whole, but I like your point, and I think we should eventually move towards like just the like change in flavors that consumers are liking, which is less. I think they're open to less sweet products.
Yes.
Yeah.
My husband, who's Spanish, always says, which is actually, this is completely going against what we were just talking about, but he always says in America, things that are supposed to be sweet aren't sweet enough.
Yeah.
And things that aren't supposed to be sweet are too sweet. So
like everything.
Yeah, like you pick up a piece of bread and it's really, really sweet, but then you go to he has a really big sweet tooth, so you go to get a dessert. And I'm like, oh, have this carrot cake. And he's like, this is not dessert.
Oh, don't even mention that to me. I had a little bit of a situation with my niece because I made carrot cake. This was a couple Easters ago. I made this beautiful carrot cake, I think and she was like, she like takes a bite of it and she's just like so shocked. She's like, pissed and is like, what is this? Like, this is not cake. And I'm like, no, yeah, it's carrot cake and it's delicious. And everyone's like, right, it's delicious. And she's like, hard no, hard pass. Like, I don't want any parts of this. So carrot cake, she and Juan Carlos should talk about this.
Did she say, is it cake?
She said, no, she said, it is not cake.
Oh, okay. So she
definitively, it is not cake.
All right.
Yeah.
So lots of stuff going on this week.
Clearly.
I was a little cross with you when we got here and you were sitting in my seat. I'm not going to lie.
But now you kind of like it. I've been wanting sometimes I like mixing it up.
We can do that.
She's still a little cross over it.
I'm a little under rested.
Well, rest and water, both very important, as we've discussed. Okay. So.
And that's the naturalist. Wrap it up, Maddie says.
Wrap it up. We need to wrap it up. You could also cut